Hey, Noelle.
Hey, trying to get my camera to start.
No worries. Let me close my door. You must be having fun. You're up north, aren't you?
I am. I'm in Boston right now.
Are you snowed in?
It's pretty white out, but not actively snowing.
Well, that's good to hear. We have been out of school for the last 2 days, so
Oh my gosh.
so yeah, and my heat is not being very heat-like.
No.
I'm like sitting here in my cold Alaska sweatshirt and my space heaters on and it's all the things. So
I am gonna restart really quick because it's saying that something else is using my camera, but nothing else is. So I'll be right.
sounds good. I will be here. Take your time. You're back with a camera. Yay.
Yay. Yeah, it's silly. This computer tries to tell me that I don't have a camera, even though it's like in the laptop. Oh, no, I'm frozen. That's good.
Yeah, it's my internet's been real bad lately, so
Give it a minute, hopefully.
and we did have a a handful of folks accept the invitation for this call, so I'm hoping we're going to have an audience today. But even if we don't, I think if you don't mind, I will at least do our kind of intro interview on, you know, what you do and your career journey and things like that. And we can just record it and have it available to students to listen to afterwards, if that's okay with you. Hello,
Hello.
nice to have
Sorry,
you
let me
here.
just turn on my camera. Nice to be here.
Hi. So, am I going to say it right? Shireen, is that right?
You can call me Sharon. Yeah.
Sharon. Okay, well, it's really nice to meet you. Where are you at?
I'm in Ithaca currently. I'm a master's student at Cornell, so
Oh, fantastic. That's too funny. I have a friend from high school that I think teaches at Cornell. Maybe he doesn't anymore. What program are you in?
oh, I'm in the environmental engineering program.
I don't know. Do you know a Dr. Butcher?
No, but my friends might know him. It's
I
my
think he's
first
in the
year here.
engineering program, but I don't know what part of the engineering program. So anyway,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
well, are you snowed in up there?
It's been snowing pretty often. Yeah, like every day.
Oh, goodness, goodness. Well, it's so nice to meet you, Sharon. Kim, it's so good to see you on the call. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Remy? It's good to see you as well.
Oh my goodness, it's been forever. You are just like knocking down walls and things. Where are you doing these days? Are you getting your
So,
master's? Is that right?
no, I'm still pursuing my undergrad. But
Oh,
I'm
okay. I'm sorry.
marine engineering program doing a co-op with Stonebrook Engineering in south of Minneapolis.
That's fantastic. Very cool. And so you are also probably seeing a lot of weather these days then?
Yes, a lot of snow.
Is it a lot different than hanging out in Oklahoma?
110%. It's so different.
Well, we are excited to have both of you here. We have our speaker who is having some technical challenges. She was in and then her camera didn't work, so she came back in and then she froze. And so I think we're waiting for her to reconnect. But we can give it another couple of minutes and see if we get any other folks that join us on the call. But this is, Sharon, have you ever done one of these webinars before? Have you been on one of these before?
I think this is my first actually. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here.
Well, that's fantastic. This is one of our newer initiatives. So while I have you both here, I'll explain a little bit of the history and kind of what these network calls are. Kim and Sharon, nice, for you to meet each other. Kim has been able to take advantage of some of our other programs. And so our student network call started as what we call the intern network call, which the idea was, there's all these students who are off from school over the summer and doing great things and internships around the country. But wouldn't it be interesting if you all got to meet each other and could broaden your perspective of what you get to learn over the summer by meeting people who are doing different things in the industry? So it was meant to create like an intern community, which was really fantastic and was very well received. And we had these weekly calls. And then at the end of it, we realized that the students still really wanted that community. So we continued this through into the school year. And so we meet monthly. And then we also realized that one of the other programs that we offer is called our conference experience. And this is an opportunity where we help you by providing hotel accommodations and a free pass to a industry trade conference like a Clean Power or an RE Plus, which are some of our larger trade conferences. And now we're doing some of the smaller conferences as well. But the idea of bringing students to trade conferences to learn a little bit about networking and how to navigate through these conferences and get something out of that. And part of what we do is set up what we call meet and greets with industry, with the idea that you would get a half hour of basically one-on-one time with an industry professional to hear about their career journey and what they do, ask them questions, get advice. And they're always very well received. And so as we moved into these monthly network calls, that's what these have turned into. They're like meet and greets, where we get to meet some wonderfully important and awesome person from industry. And they get to tell you a little bit about what they do, the company they work for, but also how they got there, and then open it up for some informal dialogue with whoever's on the call. And then we do record these so that we can share them with students that are not able to hop on these calls due to their crazy class schedules. Yay, Noelle, it's all working and you're not frozen. Fantastic. You're on mute though, so.
I had to switch to iPad because the laptop has decided not to work today. So here I am.
Good. Well, I was just meeting these lovely ladies and telling them a little bit about how our student network call webinar series kind of came about. And so I'll let you introduce yourselves, keep this relatively informal. I have a couple of updates of things on our end that I just want to make sure folks are aware of different opportunities coming up. And then I'll turn it over to Noelle to tell you more about who she is and all the fun things. So, Sharon, did you want to introduce yourself just quickly?
Yeah, of course. So nice to meet you all. I'm Sharon. I'm currently a master's student at Cornell University, and I'm studying environmental engineering. Renewable energy has always been a passion of mine, so I've kind of started to delve into these sorts of meetings and like learning more about the industry and trying to learn from professionals as well. So I'm happy to be here today. Thank you guys for having me also.
You bet. Thanks for joining us. And Kim?
Yes, so my name is Kimberly. I am currently an undergrad at Minnesota State University. I am studying integrated engineering with a focus in mechatronics. I really love the renewable energy space. I've done some work with Kidwood National and with with Repowering Schools. And I really enjoyed volunteering there and spending some time there. I'm really passionate about the renewable space, so I like to make sure that I still have my foot in it while I'm in my undergrad.
Awesome.
Great. That's awesome. I love to
Thank
hear
you.
the enthusiasm.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have a couple more folks trickling in as we move forward. So like I said, I have a couple of things that I just want to make sure that you all are aware of on the student side. As I was telling you earlier, we have these conference experiences, but we also offer student symposia at a select number of these conferences. So I just kind of wanted to give you our outlook for the year. So we are going to be at the end of this month at our Distributed Wind Energy Association annual conference, which is in the DC area. And we do host a small student symposium during that. That's at the end of the month. So applications are closed, but we're looking, the outlook is really cool. We're gonna have some great speakers, some meet and greets. And then we'll be doing a field trip to Soul Systems, which Kim, you were able to join us at Soul Systems, I think the first time we went. They've welcomed us back with open arms for the last couple of years. And then this year, for the first time, our students at the Student Symposium are presenting to the conference attendees during the conference, which is like a big deal. And they will have a poster session in the evening, but they've also been invited to join the lobby day efforts on Wednesday after their field trip. So going in and getting to meet with, congressional leaders and talk to them about the importance of renewable energy policy, specifically around small wind. But it should be a fantastic event. Coming up, our next kind of application that you'll see is for the ACES Solar Conference. This is the American Solar Energy Society. Their conference is in August in Boulder, Colorado at UC Boulder. And we are aiming to have our very first solar student symposiums. If you have any folks that you know that work in the solar area and are doing research, we're going to be opening that up to students to be able to poster sessions, hopefully oral sessions, and the demo opportunity at their solar village on the last day, as well as a field trip to Jack's Solar Garden. You learn about agrivoltaics. So it should be a fun week. We are also planning to be at the IPF Offshore Conference, American Clean Power, and RE Plus in some way, shape, or form, and hopefully even the Rise Leadership Forum at the end of the year in October in Atlanta. But we don't have a lot of details on those quite yet. It's usually dependent on funding, and I don't know if you know, but funding's a little slim these days. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to make it all happen. The other thing I wanted to mention was, especially for you students, we have these Renewable Energy Education Awards we do in conjunction with the Kidwin Project. And not only should you go out there and nominate one of your fantastic faculty members that's an outstanding educator, or we could, but you could also self-nominate under that student excellence section. If you've got some great project that you've done, or something that you think you are very proud of, I feel like a self-nomination is super appropriate. And then the other thing that we had started last year was something called Repowered Schools. So these are if your university has wind or solar installations on campus and then are using those in the classroom to help make you better students and teach you about the renewable energy industry. We want to recognize those schools that not only are demonstrating, but like walking the walk in the classroom as well. So our link is not active, but if you just go to our website, there's a section for awards and you can nominate from there. And you should all nominate somebody because it's super fun and it's free. And then I can send this information around to you guys, but I just want to let you know that we do these on a monthly basis, but there's a lot of companies out there that have really amazing webinar series on top of what we do, that are maybe content specific, as we kind of focus more on like companies and learning more about the career opportunities. So I'm happy to share these links with you in a follow-up email in case you want to take advantage of any of those. Okay, and with that, don't want to take up a lot of our time. I will turn it over to Noelle, and I'm going to stop sharing and make sure that you have the ability to share your screen.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind sharing, I just resent you the PDF and the PowerPoint. I'm on my iPad and I don't want it to freak out.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
I'm in Boston right now, and the snow is inhibiting some network stuff right now. So doing the best I can.
Not a problem. I'm just glad you're here. So let me go ahead and I think it's still loading. So just give me a moment and we will slideshow you. Okay, should be good to go.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So hi, I'm Noelle Paige. I am the head of project development at Aspen Power. We are based in New York City. I live in DC, but I travel a lot for site visits and team meetings. I go to New York a lot, but yeah, I am really excited to talk to y'all today. I think this effort is so important. I used to sit in Merchandise Mart in Chicago when I was in grad school and buy people coffee and ask them what their job was because I didn't know. I had no idea, you know, what a project manager was or like what some industries were. And I learned so much. And that's kind of like a more formal way. This is a more formal way to do that. So when I learned about this, I was really excited. So really happy to be here. Go to the next one. Yeah. So as a student or a career transitioning person, either military or another career, how often do you think you hear, well, experience is the best way to get it? How do you get experience? By getting a job. And it used to drive me crazy because I was both new to the workforce as a recent grad student, off through career as a professional ballet dancer. And I didn't know that experience would really do anything for me as I left the stage, right? So I want to kind of give you my take on that and my experience, right? So we can go to the next one. A big part of, I think, my approach to my career and like my career transition was having to get creative. And I think a way to really drill down into that is thinking thematically. So if you have experience doing something, even if it's volunteer work, even if it's something in high school, I started a recycling club in high school, and that's strategic planning, right? It's organization, it's management. If you have experience helping your class with a new software, or you're the go-to for AI or ChatGPT, you can note that and you can highlight that experience. And in my specific example, as a ballet dancer, I would do lecture demonstrations. So I would go out with my company that I was working with at the time, and we would build a ballet. And we would roll out the Marley, set up a little stage. And these were in very rural communities in the panhandle of Florida, in southern Alabama, probably students that hadn't ever heard of Swan Lake or Balanchine or even the Nutcracker. And so I was teaching and explaining a very niche topic to a demographic and a population that probably didn't know much about it. So when I got into solar, that's exactly how I got into solar. I started in community outreach and zoning. My first job was a zoning development analyst. So I would organize these community meetings. I would do the mailers. I would talk to landowners. And I was teaching a very niche subject to a population and a demographic that didn't know a lot about solar. So I was doing the same thing. And so when I finally kind of like, oh, thematically, I can think about this of all my experience as a ballet dancer and touring and doing this. And you're going to have these kind of creative, like, oh, yeah, that is this. And the way to kind of drill into that, I think, is having conversations like this. What did you do in high school? Were you in a club? Did you do this? Like, what do you like to do in your free time? And you can really kind of build a narrative of the themes of your skill set. So it doesn't have to be, I've had 6 years of experience working at a bank, you can get creative with it. Another thing is your personal brand. We live in a very digital world, despite technical difficulties happening all the time still. But having a positive reputation on LinkedIn or in articles, interviews, etc., can really demonstrate how you will represent a company or an organization. I put positive and in parentheses there because got negative stuff on there. Bury that. We want to highlight our strengths. But you can leverage that because people Google you. I have had landowners tell me that they Google me and say, oh yeah, you're a ballerina, huh? Customers, vendors, they want to know who they're working with. This can also kind of lead to the conversation of, oh, I'm going to join a startup and we need to talk about our first capital raise. Do I have a professional presence online? Like, can that help this new brand, this new startup kind of be legitimized? And of course, the big picture impact and sort of having, like, if you did something that's really community driven or community organizing in any capacity, whether it's Ronald McDonald House or Girl Scouts efforts, building a home for Habitat for Humanity, that kind of stuff is just, it's really powerful. And you get a lot of skills with networking and organizing and doing a little bit of everything. So leverage that. Don't think that you have to kind of stick to hard skill set, because there's so much more thematic work and like creativity that you can bring to it. Any conversations we're having with interviews or even just networking events. We'll go to the next one. Networking. This is such a buzzword. So much like Merchandise Mart, we can do that online. You can not buy people coffee and ask them what their job is, but you can message them. And in my experience, people tend to be a lot more like approachable and willing to have that 5-minute conversation with you or 15-minute conversation with you than you might think they would be. I know I am. I'm always happy to have a conversation and tell somebody what I do. Like, again, this organization is really awesome for kind of formalizing that. And networking is not asking for a job. Not tell you how many times I've had former colleagues or former peers from grad school or undergrad text me out of the blue and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Are you hiring? You know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how are you? I haven't talked to you in 5 years. That's not networking, right? It's a dialogue. It's hearing people's paths. It's sharing yours. It's hearing their experiences. It's sharing your experiences, because you can learn a lot to their reactions and their follow-up questions. And that can help you, again, build your creative narrative and your themes. Attending networking events also helps your brand. Again, digital society, post it on LinkedIn, we're taking photos, we're tagging people, and we're just building our network. And my favorite line is, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. I haven't applied for a job in 7 years. Like, click the button, did that once. I have just been in the industry. And personally, I feel like that's a really good way to do it, because you get to have more control over your role. You can pitch a role. You can have a long conversation with a team or a company, or as somebody starting a company. And that's just a little bit more organic, and you really get to know yourself, rather than like a job description that's 3 paragraphs, right? Like, how do you really know that that's a good fit for you? And it's just like, it's a little cold starting, and it's just really, really helpful when someone comes to you because they see your work and they want to know more, and they want to know what you can bring to the organization. Next slide. So my favorite topic, I did a salary negotiation workshop at the Rise Leadership Forum last year, and I'm actually doing it again in a couple of weeks in New York. And nobody wanted the topic, and I couldn't believe it. And I was really excited that I put my name down, and I was the only one that wanted to do it. It just tends to have kind of an emotional reaction in people, and people get awkward. Let's take that out of it. You know, this is just part of the dialogue. It's part of the networking process, right? It's part of getting a job. And this is obviously not on like government schedule pay. This is very corporate, private sector, probably a little bit of nonprofit, probably more relevant to that side of the sector. But make them give you a number first. I did this recently. I changed jobs about 6 months ago. And if my boss, my COO were here right now, he would probably giggle, because he totally called me out for it. He's like, wow, you really flipped that back on me. I was like, absolutely. You know, they have an idea of the valuation of the position, even if you're the one pitching it, or they're coming to you, or the position doesn't exist yet. Those conversations should have already happened. Maybe in rare cases they haven't. If it's, you know, a startup and we're just kind of figuring things out, or building a team, or kind of having this like inquisitive workshopping, I guess. But most of the time, they've already have kind of a range allocated. And you want to get where their head's at. And a lot of places now have the ranges posted, which is governed by state law. I know New York does, New York City does. So we usually have pretty narrow range that we'll post with all of our open positions. But it is a dialogue. Don't just, you know, if you are going the job description posted LinkedIn route, and you have that kind of range, or even the flat salary and title, you don't have to stick to that. Everything can be a conversation. Everything is negotiable. Have you guys ever heard of someone's job changing like a lot after they've started? I know I hear about it all the time. Like, wow, I didn't know I'd be running that department too. Or wow, I didn't know I would have to implement this whole new software. You want to learn how to kind of have those conversations on the front end. And part of that is showing the company or the organization or the hiring manager or the recruiter that you, one, think critically, and two, the job might be a lot bigger than they think it is, or than what they're trying to hire for today. You know, what is the job going to look like in a month or 6 or a year? And I have some of the questions here that I know I've used and that I've like learned to ask over my career in several positions that may or may not have changed substantially after I've already been there. And we can probably share this PDF with folks if they want it, but this is being recorded. You want to just have the dialogue, workflow, existing workflow, improvements or structural changes within the organization, or even externally, like a new capital raise, a new sponsor, a new partner, mergers, acquisitions, stuff like that. You just start asking those questions to get an idea of like what's coming. Software systems is a big one. Software implementation is a lot for any organization. It always takes twice as long as you think it would, because you're always gonna forget some sort of metadata or some sort of workflow trigger automation, or you're gonna stub your toe in the middle of it and figure out, oh gosh, I didn't incorporate accounting into this, or whatever it may be. So thinking about that, if that's on the horizon for an organization. And this is a big one that I've seen just being in the solar industry. It's a pretty young industry and it's had immense growth. Process documentation. Where does it live? Who do I send? Is it via email? Do I call this person? What role owns reviewing title reports? You know, what role owns issuing checks out if I need to pay for a permit application? Stuff like that. And if that's not kind of in a flowchart or a manual or built into workflow, that can be pretty confusing, especially when you do have fast growth, because you bring all this talent in, they don't know what to do or how to get anything done. And you bring great people in because you want to get stuff done, but they don't know how, right? So if you are a process type A person, well, that is a very good one to market for yourself, because it is so important and so valuable. But the goal here again is just to show the employer or hiring manager, recruiter, whomever you're talking to, that you can think big picture and that the role is a little bit bigger than maybe they think they're hiring for. Okay, next one. These are just some of my favorite solar resources, and I am 100% solar. I have no wind experience, no hydro. I feel really lame and boring sometimes when I go to these conferences and I hear these like other technologies, and I'm like, wow, what is that? But I love it. I am all solar all the time. A little bit of storage now and again. But Earth, Wind, and Solar is a podcast from a really prominent law firm in the industry. And they have amazing people come on talking about emerging laws or regulations or how people are navigating challenges. It's really, really interesting. RISE, the Women of Renewable Industries and Sustainable Energy, is exactly what it sounds like. You mentioned the RISE Leadership Forum earlier. That is an awesome event. The energy is just always fantastic there. It's very like, leave your ego at the door, and like everybody's here to learn and connect and like truly network. And it's just, you can get there. It's awesome. And then SEIA, of course, the Solar Energy Industries Association. They have a lot of resources on their website. They host quarterly and monthly meetings on certain topics, whether it's distributed generation, utility scale, policy, etc. And then Clean Power Hour. I actually met with the host of Clean Power Hour this morning here at RE Boston and talked about a lot of what I'm talking to you guys about today. But this stuff is just kind of a good way to start speaking the language, if that makes sense, like immerse yourself into what themes and what people are talking about in the industry. And it just gets you a little bit like more in it, if that makes sense. Keep going to the next slide. So shifting a little bit to what I do day to day, as just like an example of a job or of, I guess, an SME, a subject matter expert in my department, which is project development. So Aspen Power is an IPP. You'll hear that a lot if you're getting in the industry, independent power producer. So we own and operate assets. A lot of companies will be investors, syndicators, or they do the early stage landowner siting, site control, going out and seeing what opportunities are there, where to put solar. Then they'll sell it to IPPs, because IPPs are the ones that are actually producing as the owner of the asset independently. I manage a team of actually more than that, because I just had someone start on Monday and I didn't update this. Manage a team of 8 directors, associates, and analysts. So I'm the vice president, and so that's kind of just how our structure goes. That's pretty standard in solar as far as I've seen. Probably varies a little bit. Titles they can be really confusing. So if you ever have that, just start the conversation of like, how is it structured? Show me an org chart of what the roles are and who relates to who. Community solar. Community solar is kind of the effort of having anybody can get clean energy. You can subscribe to have your energy bill recognize that you want to participate and have your energy be clean energy. Some states that really thrive in community solar: New York, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts. Those are kind of the big states and the really big programs that have been around for a while. Commercial and industrial, sometimes you'll hear that referenced as C&I, those are the big customers. It's Amazon, Toyota. They're putting solar on their warehouses or even in a plot of land or in a parking lot that they have in factories. And that's usually bottom line driven because they want to spend less on overhead of their energy bills. But it's also the effort of having clean energy and being able to say that, right? Amazon, I know, has a ton of their warehouses and sites with solar on it. And then multifamily, we also have a small portion of the pipeline, multifamily real estate in California. And those are mostly rooftop projects that go on new construction buildings in California to comply with some of their kind of goals of decarbonization. Different types of systems: ground mount, pretty straightforward, it's mounted on the ground; rooftop, and then carports and canopies, which sometimes used interchangeably, but canopies kind of refer to like a parking garage. You have the whole big canopy, and then the carport is like the smaller ones that are over parking spaces. Not that that distinction is incredibly important, but you will hear it kind of back and forth as you're talking to people in the industry. And they're different structures, right? Because ground mount is off ground, you're putting racking in the ground. Rooftop, you're on somebody's roof. What does that mean for their structural load of the warehouse, the building? So it just kind of leads you to different conversations and obviously different equipment. Front of the meter versus behind the meter, FTM, BTM. Front of the meter is going onto the grid for everybody else to be mixed with all the other energy that's going onto the grid. Behind the meter is the opposite of that. So if Amazon, a C&I customer, has a rooftop system behind the meter, that warehouse that the rooftop system is on is getting that energy. So it's not going out and coming back in, staying on the site. So it's on-site load. And these are just phrases and kind of distinctions that can get a little blurry if you don't speak this every day, right? And everything is like an acronym, and I have kind of an anecdote. My husband's in the Army. The military is notorious for their acronyms. And we had a dinner party, and it was half military people and half solar people. And we had an acronym off, because it's just all of us are speaking in 3-letter acronyms all the time. So I try to just kind of throw these out there as people are kind of coming into the industry. So you're not like, what is this FTM, BTM? What does this mean? But development, project development specifically, is my department. And it's the time of a project's life after that initial siting of going out and talking to a landowner or a customer, and before you actually break ground or get on the roof, right? So it's very paperwork heavy. It's very drawings and designs. It's very negotiating with counties or townships or school boards for permits. It's a lot of budgeting of how much does this cost today versus how much is it going to cost in a year and a half when I think I'm actually going to be able to build it. How much is the equipment going to cost? Is the equipment in the country? Is it in the warehouse? Do we have it already? Is it going to take 30 weeks to get here? and kind of all of that scheduling, all of that budgeting, the permitting, the regulatory, a lot of policy work, and a lot of conversations, a lot of people and collaboration. The customer and landowner relationship is a big part of my day. As I said, you know, we're kind of trying to keep landowners apprised of what we're doing, but we're also trying to find the best board with those schedules and those budgets. Permits is a big one too. Obviously, everything has to be permitted, and diving into what jurisdiction or what agency has authority to permit your development is always a journey. It's not as straightforward as you think it might be, but luckily we have a lot of states that have adopted kind of a standardized ordinance or process, so we can kind of, you know, rinse and repeat, and like we know what we need to be cautious of and have those conversations. Environmental work a lot. I am a bird nerd. I love birds. I can like recite bird regulations and buffers and setbacks, but we have to look for that, right? If we are building a system and we're cutting down trees, we have to be aware of the Golden Bald and Eagle Act, you know, and the northern long-eared bat is a big one up here in the Northeast, and that affects time of year restrictions on mobilization, on cutting down trees. So again, that's kind of part of the planning process of budgeting and scheduling. The FAA, dealing with airports. If you're close to an airport, you gotta let the FAA know that you're going to be building there. But actually, in 2021, I think the FAA came out with sort of a standardized their view of solar sites. So that has gotten actually really quick and streamlined for us. If you're actually building on an airport, it's a bit more involved. I've had a couple of airport projects, and since that's federal jurisdiction, you're subject to a lot more permitting and a lot more agency review. You're going to have U.S. Fish and Wildlife do an actual review. You got to get all your studies to submit to them, and it's just a bit more, just because it is federal land, basically. Title reports, real estate. Really, you want to find out, you know, what's going on the land or the building or the customer on the real estate records. And then RECs, REC, renewable energy credits. REC incentives are programs usually by the state that we apply for. And that's, again, state policy and state goals of trying to incentivize green energy. Project financing. Stuff costs money. We gotta pay for it. So we have construction loans and development loans and tax equity investments. Tax equity investment is probably what makes solar what it is today in this country. It's unique to the US. There's a few different structures of how investors can come into a project or a portfolio of projects. I'm not going to get too financy and accounting on you because that is not my world. I'll rather go back to the FAA and my birds and all that. But we do kind of the traditional development loans, and you turn that into a construction loan. And once you pay your construction contractor off, you pay off your construction debt in sort of that pretty market standard structure. Go to the next one. So I put this here because of my merchandise mart coffee days. Just types of roles that are at pretty much every IPP, every developer. Obviously project management, and like the front end of the construction side is project development, what I just talked to you about. Financing, just mentioned that. Marketing, engineers, obviously, lots of different types of engineers. Accounting, everybody's got to have an accountant. Procurement and supply chain has become so important in recent years with traceability and tariffs, and I guess the realization that we really need to scrutinize where our steel and our equipment is coming from and all of the parts, because there was a big scandal, I guess, with, you can call it a scandal, with forced labor a few years ago. And that's really what shed light on, oh my gosh, like we need to know exactly where this stuff is coming from and plan for that, right? Because it's probably going to take longer, it'll be more expensive, we might need to diversify where we're getting our equipment. So supply chain is a big department that's grown in recent years. Of course, construction management, working with contractors on the site. Policy is changing all the time. We're reviewing, we're commenting, we're advocating, we're analyzing. How does this new proposal in the state of Virginia affect our projects in the pipeline? How does the new IRA, right, the Inflation Reduction Act, when that was rolled out, what does this mean? What are these adders? How do I do this? You know, how do I benefit from it, and how do I comply with it? So we have a lot of policy efforts and analysts in the industry. And of course, sales and customer facing people, kind of referred to as originators, originations, and citing people. That's really kind of the specific of this type of sales, I think is a good way to put it. So are you talking to Amazon for their request for proposal for a site on 5 warehouses, right? Are you going to landowners in Maryland, knocking on doors after they, had an inquiry online? So it just kind of depends on what sector the developer is, or the IPP is in, what their sales team and customer facing team would look like. And of course, business and ops management, as I mentioned earlier, process manuals is really important. And so having operational management and business structure, kind of those roles are really important as well. That's the next one. Here's my contact info if you want to talk more, but maybe we have some questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Noelle. I will totally leave it open to Sharon and Kimberly to ask away. Sharon, it looks like you have a question.
Oh yeah, so I was gonna say, first of all, thank you for your talk. There was a lot of things I didn't realize that you touched on, and I like how you explained like all the terms really clearly. I don't see a lot of people go back and kind of explain industry relevant terms, so that was really helpful personally for me, since it's something like this is an industry that I want to go into. So like knowing this can already kind of help you figure out what you want to do in the industry. So I was kind of wondering, since you were talking about policies, especially if there were any major changes in policy that you've noticed in like the past year, maybe with like the new political things going on, like how has that impacted the solar industry in ways that you've seen?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the feedback, and thank you. I'm glad that kind of terminology overview is helpful. As far as policy changes, especially with any new administration, any change, right? It's uncertainty. And so it's managing the fact that banks and customers and investors just don't know what's going to happen. And so how do we plan for that? How do we just kind of stay level-headed and like look at historical events and this industry and the growth and forecast kind of big picture and long term, rather than kind of getting stuck in the, well, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or a year from now. Other policy changes, Virginia, the state of Virginia has a bill that they're, I guess, reviewing at this time to standardize local ordinances and kind of piggyback on New York. Maryland has a very similar program, and that's just an effort to kind of treat every project the same in each county. And so it's sort of an interesting conversation of federalism, right? Like, who has the jurisdiction to oversee this, and can we all agree on something to streamline it, but then have kind of go back to the local communities to enforce and add any like niche, I guess, regulations or design implications on it.
Thank you. That makes sense. I guess, like, in terms of specifically the Inflation Reduction Act that you mentioned, do you expect to see any changes upcoming with the incentives that are offered?
Yeah, $1 million question, or probably a lot more than $1 million. I personally, I think it would be pretty wild to dismantle something that was in progress for so long and that had so much of like an implementation exercise because there were like rounds of guidance being released like throughout the last couple of years from the IRS. And so like having so many organizations and departments involved and so many policy analysts and experts commenting and tweaking and refining. And then of course, insurance companies, yes, we'll insure this. Yes, this makes sense. There was just so much that it's hard to grapple with like that completely going away or big chunks of it going away. But I mean, it is, you know, I guess anything is possible. I guest lecture at DePaul University, my alma mater for graduate school. And I did this whole presentation on tax equity. And I was pulling sections from the Build Back Better plan, which was a few years ago. And in that presentation, I had like a footnote that said, and even if this doesn't pass, we're probably going to see it again. And sure enough, those exact same references I had pulled out from the Build Back Better ended up in the IRA. You know, so it's like when something has been built and structured and analyzed for that long, it's hard to just make it go away, right? So I think I'm hopeful about it, at least just knowing a little bit of the history and all that went into the IRA.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really reassuring to hear also.
Awesome. Those are great questions. Thank you.
I have a couple comments and questions. So, thank you for presenting to us today and for the information that you provided. I've really enjoyed, I took some notes here on some of the avenues that I can kind of keep my foot into the renewable space. I especially really liked the part about kind of having those candid conversations with people in the industry, you know, so that you can kind of get an idea for what they do, the roles that they can play in that. And so I really like that approach. So but on top of that though, working like co-ops and internships now, what are some ways that you could suggest, like once you get into whatever field or role that it is that you're in, to like maintain that momentum and having a place in like space? Because, you know, I find that it's like, you know, I start working and then like in the co-op I have right now, I work and then I do classes at night. But eventually I'm just going to be working, but I still want to make sure that I'm involved. Besides just kind of like maintaining that momentum and learning what these terms are and knowing what's going on, like how would you suggest that we can get involved in like policy and having those conversations?
Yeah, no, great question. I think building on some of the stuff that I kind of mentioned, like your personal brand, right? And like networking isn't asking for a job, like it's staying connected with people. And just because you've, you know, landed the job, right? There's still a whole company that job works in and around, right? And so befriending and networking internally too, you know, so don't just stick to, you know, your little team. Personally, I've gone back and forth between project development and project financing. So I was kind of a deal lead on debt closings and tax equity investments. And then I hopped back to project development, but being a developer made me way better at talking to banks and explaining some of the problems that arise in development and vice versa, right? I know what banks and insurance companies and investors care about and ask about and maybe don't know a lot about. So it makes me better at that too. So once you kind of get into a position where you know, get your bearings and you figure out where your position fits into the company, you can kind of start like brainstorming of like, well, I don't talk to those engineers very often. Like, what do they do? How do they fit in? And so you kind of start learning the whole structure. And that can just be really valuable, like the big picture stuff. And you learn a lot along the way. And one day, eventually, you're a manager, you're gonna have to manage teams that you haven't been on, right? So like my COO manages me and the procurement department head, the construction department head, the head of scheduling and controls, you know, and like I don't think he's had all four of those discrete positions, you know, but he obviously knows enough to be a COO. So it's kind of that training of like one bite at a time, one step at a time of like how roles all fit together to really help with the momentum. And of course, networking externally, right? Just because you already have your job and you're thriving at it, go to the forum, have these conversations some more. There's always more to learn. Like I poke fun of myself of just being solar because I go to the Women's Energy Network conference, and that's all energy. And I am like blown away and some of the technology and like stuff that I just haven't even heard of, and I'm just constantly learning and kind of connecting with other people in energy in general.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
And just to piggyback on what Noelle was saying, I highly agree. Attending the conferences and things are a fantastic way to learn about the industry. That's why we love to get you there. But the reason that we go every year is, to learn all the new things, to make sure that we are, understanding what's trending. But also, you just never know when your next opportunity is going to come. And I don't think many people are like me. I've been in my job for almost 20 years, but I mean, a lot of people, they make their way through the industry until they find the space where they feel, that they belong. And so you might move from wind to solar to storage before you realize that storage is where you're meant to be. And so those knowing people in the industry, continuing to have those informal conversations about what people do is always important, even after you get that first job and get out of college. So that's how I met Noelle. I mean, I just asked her who you are, what do you do? And I think it's so cool. And I wish I, had your job, but here we are.
Real life example. That's networking. Look at it.
And it looks like we have another caller who was able to join us. And so I invite you to introduce yourself because we did introductions, I think, before you joined us. So.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much, Remy and Noelle. Been following behind the scenes, and I must say, thumbs up. Good job from all of you. And it's actually very insightful getting to, basically learn and see how things are done. So, yeah, good job. My name is Oluoch Were, originally from Kenya, East Africa. And been in the renewable energy sector, mainly solar, for the last 12 years. And this is mainly solar development. And how did I come across this? I've been following or I've subscribed to quite a number of, information from Aspen. And that's how I came across this newsletter or, to do with this webinar. And aside from that, I've engaged or I've been able to interact with one member who serves at Aspen by the name of Joe, Mr. Joe Howe. I think he's currently the executive director, asset management, back in Kenya. That's 2 years ago. So we somehow know each other. And I recently moved to the US. This is my 6th month. And I thought it's proper for me to be able to basically just join, get to learn more. It's a different ball game altogether, Africa and the US. So I had to join this and get to learn and hear from the experts. And from the couple of minutes that I've been here, I must confess, I've been able to quite to learn a lot. So it's been a pleasure. So my question is more or less related to what Shireen asked, and this is with regards to, the new administration, whereby I recently came across an article whereby it stated that Trump or the new administration has paused renewable energy projects leasing on federal lands and waters. So my question is, does this have any effect to Aspen's operations, or for you it's mainly working in partnership with private entities, of which I believe you must also be somehow working with the federal government. So anyway, my question is, does this executive order have any effects on Aspen's operations? Thank you very much. I hope it makes sense.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you. Thank you for the comments. I really appreciate it. As far as kind of our relationship, I guess, with the federal government, Aspen is mostly direct to landowner, or even like indirect to landowner, because we have a lot of channel partners or co-developers that we'll work with that really know their state or even like their portion of the state that can help us navigate and scale our pipeline. to be, you know, in multiple states, like as many as we can be in, but they really like know Virginia, for example. So not a whole lot of federal, I guess, approvals needed, or buy-in, I guess, for some of these to get siting. And then on the commercial and industrial side, that is, you know, private entities. I used to work at Onyx Renewable Partners, and they have a lot of military projects. And I'm really curious to see how that rolls out, because the Department of Defense has a lot of goals for megawatts that are not that are sustainable, right? And it's about readiness, and it's about acknowledging the environment, and also repurposing land. You know, there's military housing, but it's maybe an old training field, and you don't want to build housing on a land that might be somewhat contaminated, you know, and you don't want to build a water source, right? Like on an old training field, but you can put solar there, you know? So let's check it out. So I'm really interested to see if those are affected and how they're affected, because there's so many kind of business structures of, you know, or do you partner with the installation specifically, so you kind of work internally with like the garrison or like the base itself, or is it like a DoD facility, so you have to kind of go through this and it triggers like the federal pause or whatever, moratorium, I guess we can call it. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens. But there was an article that came out a few days ago that said that USACE, the Army Corps of Engineers that reviews all of the wetlands impacts, right? They have jurisdiction over all navigable waters. Sometimes we have wetlands that we need to delineate, right, and buffer off of, or get impact permits if we want to replace a culvert or something. And USACE is the one that reviews those. And all of the renewable energy applications were like paused for reasons. And then that was like almost immediately lifted, I think. And there was like 12 hours later, I saw another article of like, it's lifted. So it's the unknown and a little bit of whiplash of having a new administration. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how it shakes out, because I do think with all of the goals that the DoD and like other federal agencies have set themselves, I think there's going to be a little bit of pushback on that.
Okay, interesting, very insightful and detailed. Thank you very much. I'll definitely be reaching out maybe sometimes later with regards to, you know, just learning the ropes and getting to understand how the landscape is, because definitely there's a lot to learn. It's not only, you know, Kimberly, it's not only Shireen, but also having been in the sector for that long, definitely this being a new ball game for me. There are quite a number of key areas that I also need to learn from, you know, experts like you and Revi. So definitely I'll be reaching out to get to, you know you more and get to understand what your job entails and so on and so forth. Thank you very much. It's also been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you joined. And yes, happy with that. We'd love to connect.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Oop, you're on mute.
Muted.
You're on
if you
mute.
would put your email in the chat, I make sure that I can share it with Noelle and Sharon and Kimberly. I think you are in my list, but if you want to put them in the chat just to make sure, I'll send a follow-up email
Sure.
with Noelle's contact information, her slides, if you're okay with that, and then the recording for anybody who was not available to get on the call. So like I said, if you want to put those in the chat, I'll make sure that you get that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Remy.
I couldn't figure out how to get the little banner that says confidential off of the bottom, but it's not confidential. Don't worry about it.
Okay. That's awesome.
It's like watermarked on there. I don't know. I know what they're doing.
Where was that? Did I miss that?
It's on like the white slides, I think. Just like at the lower right corner. You just ignore that.
Totally. Okay, sounds good.
No, nothing proprietary in there.
Wonderful. And yeah, so if you share those emails in the chat, and then if you guys have any other more questions, if you have any other questions for Noelle or for myself, you know, we're here for another couple of minutes, or if you need to head to your next class or something, we'll say thank you for being here. And like I said, I'll send a follow-up email with contact information slides and any links to announcements and things. So.
Thanks. Thank you, Kimberly. And thank you, all of you. This is great. I love to hear the enthusiasm, and apologies for my technical difficulties. I appreciate you sharing the slides kind of last minute.
No worries. Happy to help. Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll see you in March. We have a gentleman who's going to be speaking to us about distributed wind generation, I believe, or distributed generation in general. So it should be a nice talk. We'll be here at the same time. And if you can't be here, we'll record it and send it on out to you.
Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice
Okay,
to
bye.
meet you all.
Bye.